That's nice, right?
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to have you here. We're going to have some time for us to talk, and we'll have some time for you guys to ask some questions at the end of the conversation. So welcome, Daniel and Daniel.
Thank you.
We were just talking backstage about how to differentiate between the two of you.
Yeah. Dan, well, see, I'm calling you Dan already. But so
We can both do Dan.
Dan was suggesting that we call him Daniel and me Dan, but I was sort of reticent about that because I know I'll just forget which one we've agreed on anyway. So
We'll start answering each other's questions.
Yeah,
and it'll work
exactly.
itself
All right,
out.
I'll just ask broad questions.
yeah,
Either
it could
you
apply
can
to
go
either.
for it.
Yeah, absolutely. What's it like having hair? Yeah.
So the movie that you guys are here to talk about, Imperium, is a little bit of a departure for probably you, and as your first big feature film, a big leap to make as a writer-director. It's based, as you guys heard, on the experiences of a real-life FBI agent who went undercover, who you had as your co-writer, Mike German. So how did you even get to meet this guy to have him and convince him to make a movie?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had actually made a short film about Fritz Haber, who was the German chemist who invented chemical weapons during World War I. And that research on World War I had led me to an interest in World War II and the Nazis. And while I was researching that, I sort of stumbled upon the neo-Nazi community in the United States and was immediately sort of stunned by the size, the depth, the breadth of the entire white supremacist movement in this country. So I became really interested in that, and I was sort of looking for a way into it, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I became aware of Mike German. And immediately that mechanism, sort of seeing it through the eyes of an FBI undercover agent, seemed to me to be a really good and effective way of sort of getting inside. So I contacted Mike. We decided early on not to use his actual story, but to create a modern fictionalized version of it that would nonetheless draw on all of his experiences, sort of try to recreate that experience, both of being an undercover agent and of being in that community. As realistically as possible. And then through working with him, and then through also doing my own research and reading sort of a ton of books and spending a lot of time on the internet and all the rest of it, we tried to sort of authentically create that world.
And actor Daniel, when the story came to you, did you have any knowledge about this community? Or were you more intrigued by this, character, the undercover aspect of it?
I mean, it was a bit of both. I mean, I would say that the thing that struck me about the script as being the thing that hooked me in first was the undercover element, and the fact that it was a really, we've all been sort of trained to think of undercover as being a certain type of thing, and actually we've been trained by by movies that make it seem either glamorous or very sort of violent, and if you ever fire a gun undercover, you're the worst undercover agent in the world. Like you're not armed. All you have in that situation, and what was exciting me about the script was the idea of seeing this person that all they have is their brain, their intelligence, their ability to read people and situations, and a certain amount of charm. And that's all they have to rely on at the end of the day. And there was something really fascinating about that, and fascinating about the fact that this film was a very authentic look at what it is like to be undercover, and in terms of the nuts and bolts work that you have to do. Like, for every hour that an undercover agent spends with the people he is surveilling, he will spend 2 hours transcribing that hour. So you were talking about working long nights in terms of isolation for long periods of time. And that's a fascinating world. I think there is something just incredibly interesting about that. And then I had an awareness that the neo-Nazi white supremacist, whatever you want to call it, movement existed in the US, as it does obviously in the UK and in many places around the world. But I didn't realize the sort of and this obviously sounds like there was a lot I didn't realize about that movement, and one of which was actually, and I know this sounds like a very strange word to use in this context, but the diversity of beliefs in that movement is actually crazy and surprising, and so they are as likely to fight each other as they are to fight any sort of minorities they might encounter on a daily basis. Like so if you imagine like a group of people that fervently and violently believe that the Bible is the word of God, working with a group of people that believe the Bible is just part of a Jewish conspiracy. Those groups of people cannot, they are mutually exclusive, and there's such a broad array of different, there are some people that come at it from a sort of pseudo-scientific, very intellectual side, and there's another groups of people that come at it from just a very kind of guttural, angry, hate-filled side, and but it's all, I suppose as Dan said, like the breadth of it was what was surprising and depressing.
Are you one of those actors that loves to embark on the research part of the project?
Yeah, I think that's one of the really, generally speaking, not so much on this job, it's one of the fun things you get to do. Well, actually, no, it's hard, that's half not true, actually, because getting to talk to Mike German, getting to actually spend hours talking to a former FBI undercover agent and just be like, so tell me stories, and I feel like people generally speaking, because I'm not a journalist and I'm not somebody who's gonna, they're not gonna see their words reprinted somewhere else, and so I feel like you get some really fascinating information, and
to your point about what people think about an FBI agent versus what they are really like, in my limited experience, they're not flashy people. No. They're very mild, and their whole thing is just to try and blend in and convince whoever they're around that they are a part of that team.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a misconception that sort of is around the same thing, which is that when you go undercover, you have to create a persona that is different from yourself. But that's really, really hard to sustain all the time and maintain all the time. So, the easiest thing to do and sort of the most advisable thing to do is to kind of be a version of yourself that just happens to harbor this belief, that happens to agree with the people that you're spending time with. So that I found fascinating. And then the other side of the research was the less pleasant stuff, which was, doing the reading of certain books. And also, I found the stuff that's really helpful to get into, to sort of see how these guys think and the way they talk to each other, and that was the internet. There's you can really go. I'm not naming where you should go to find this stuff because I don't want to give them any publicity. But there's, if you want to see what these guys think, then there's plenty of places you can find it. And it's that part of the research was pretty bleak. But it was important to do it and to have to sort of have that in mind and to have sort of some kind of an understanding of the mental gymnastics that these people do to convince themselves of these things and to keep themselves convinced of these things. And if anything, if there's one thing I took away from the film as a whole, it's that we, as much as we want to aggressively dismiss these people and sort of as repelled as we are by them and their beliefs, the more we try to ostracize them or cut them off or pretend it doesn't exist, the more it feeds into their worldview that the world is a conspiracy against them. And if we're ever hoping to change minds, as unpleasant as this will be, there will have to be some level of engagement with the people that whose views we find abhorrent.
Right, you said we were talking backstage and you said one of the things that excites you about this film, and I assume the same is true for you as the filmmaker, is that it's an opportunity to start a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a conversation that's being had, and I think it's a part of that, and I think that's the whole, with both this film and the play I'm doing at the moment, there's what's become, which is about sort of privacy and civil liberties and things, and it is, the power of this, of talking and having conversations and getting people thinking like that. Stuff takes on so much more power when it can't be talked about or when it isn't talked about. That's when things become even more dangerous, and I think that as a society, this is one of the things we can do to stop that happening. Not this specifically, but like the conversations that this might engender with you and all of your friends and everything. Like, it's talking is the most powerful tool that I think we have.
Well, on that note, let's watch the trailer so we can all be on the same page.
You see the type of organization we have here? We could always use a man like you, Nathan. Educated, war veteran, clean record.
And so what's the overall objective?
This is revolutionary activity we're talking about here.
I need an informant. Get in there and make a difference.
We are a thinking man's soldiers. First here, and then here. We know where you live.
I don't have the skills for this. I can't even defend myself.
You do have the skills. Try relating to these guys as human beings. We see what we want to see. But just because you're not looking at something
Get your hands off me.
doesn't mean it's not there.
You okay there, Nate? Look a little off.
Big things that are coming.
An event that wakes people up. Massive terrorist plot.
It's morning in America, and there's a new day coming.
Are you a cop?
These guys are fanatics. They will not be taken alive. For evil to triumph, it only takes good men. To do nothing.
Let me ask you something, Nathan. What's your opinion on infiltration?
Do you suspect someone?
It's just, it's like they say at these rallies. You look to the left, look to the right. One of these people is a snitch. It's the left.
I should say also that it's obviously a thriller. But
Yes. Yeah, as we are having this sort of, as these issues are being explored, I am also trying to stop a terrorist plot very actively. Yes.
so when you guys were embarking on this research, did you feel, I mean, you kind of delved more deeply into it as you started. Did you feel scarred by it in some way, by the things you're like, why are you laughing?
Oh no, just because I know, like, because I know the extent of the research that Dan did, and I feel like if he says, I don't know if scarred's the right word, but it definitely, like, it does. It's a grim laugh.
It makes an impact. I mean, I will say this. I mean, there was sort of an initial period of maybe 3 or 4 months where it was really just about the research, and that's where I was talking to Mike regularly, but then also, like I said, I'd sort of assembled this bookshelf of all of these resources, and they ranged from, memoirs by people who had been in the movement and who had left the movement, books, sort of biographies of famous people in the movement, books by social scientists who had sort of spent time in the movement and allowed people to express themselves in their own words. So there was this sort of vast set of resources, and I mean, in the middle of that, it was really challenging. It was very dark. I did have moments where I thought, well, why am I doing this? Of all the worlds to explore, why explore something so dark? I'm glad that I did in the end, but it's difficult because, number one, the worldview itself obviously is incredibly dark. These people do believe that they're the ones that are being exterminated and victimized and all these other things. And also the conviction with which they hold these views is so complete and is so powerful that the hope of being able to change their minds and reason with them seems very dim when you're in the midst of reading about it. Obviously, people do leave the movement. They do change their minds. That happens all the time. So it's not impossible at all. And one of the hopes of working on a project like this, like Dan was saying, is that through talking about it and through communication, you can make some kind of a difference. But yes, to be in the grips of that and to also understand and realize, well, what you're looking at is really a version of the thing that whatever it was 70 years ago, plunged the entire world into mass murder and genocide and darkness, and it still exists, and it's still in some communities thriving, and it's in fact in certain cases in taking over political elections in Europe and all the rest of it. So so yes, it's a long way of saying it is challenging, it is dark, but I do think that there is hope that it can be dealt with, and over time.
Did you guys meet any of those people who had left the movement?
Not myself, no.
I did not myself, no. I mean, for me, it was really about, like I said, it was about the reading, and as Dan mentions, the internet is again, I hate to use it, it's an amazing resource for that. I mean, you can find online communities where the discussion will not only be about political beliefs, but will be about everything from, who's your favorite composer, who's your favorite artist, here's some great recipes, here's a great workout routine, I'm trying to find somebody to date. Like all of this stuff, which is really bizarre when you're coming at it from the point of view that I was, but also very illuminating because it speaks to the fact that these are complete and total people that have lives, that have loves, that have concerns, that have jokes, that have all the things that we have, and that's one of the more challenging and more complex parts of dealing with this subject is that you have to recognize that's part of the picture and is going to be part of any sort of authentic portrayal of this world.
And for either of you, as you were making the film, and especially as you're creating these sort of shaded portraits of some of the members of this community, were you fearful that the film could be taken the wrong way, misconstrued? No.
Not particularly. Because if anyone asked me, I'd say no. There's a very you know what I mean. It's just I don't think so. I think what the film does is recognize that these people are human beings, and that in order for a lot of these films sort of tend to preach to the choir. Now, if there might be some white supremacists that go and see this movie and see it to hate watch it because they know that I'm Jewish or whatever, but if any of them go in, and if even if one mind is changed because of that, that's fantastic. And I think that this film maybe has a chance of doing that because it recognizes them as human beings first and foremost. Yes, they're human beings with beliefs that are horrible to me, but they are still human beings, and we have to maintain our belief that a certain percentage of those minds can be changed. And I think that if you start off a conversation with somebody by saying, you are less than me, or you are evil inherently, then of course they're never going to engage enough with you for you to actually change their mind. So as hard as it is, and as horrible and counterintuitive as it is, we will, if you hope to change people's minds, you can't write off their humanity.
I mean, to echo what Dan's saying, I think you can take a very firm and uncompromising stand against these belief systems, against these kinds of politics, against all of it. A very firm stand, as firm a stand as anybody could take, while still recognizing that these are human beings and that you can engage with them as human beings. And in fact, I mean, one of their chief complaints would be that their arguments and their viewpoint are, they would say they don't live in a free society and that they're not able to espouse their views and that they can't say what's on their mind. And to me, it's like, that's part of the reason that we live in a democracy. Say what's on your mind so that all of us who disagree with it can recognize the lack of value in those things and can point to the ways in which they're destructive to our society, to our democracy, and to other people. And so, to me, again, it's through dialogue, not through suppression, that even the objectives that we have, which are to try to transcend these belief systems and ultimately defeat them, that happens, as far as I'm concerned, through dialogue and through conversation.
Yeah, and also I think to not engage with people in that way means that you, on some level, I think, believe that people come out of the womb thinking that, and that there's no way of changing it. And I really don't think that that's true. I think everyone is taught to feel this or taught to believe these things on some level. And also it's one of the things that the film sort of discusses is that, this world of white supremacy is a really broad mixture of true believers and, frankly, opportunists who recognize that playing into people's sort of baser instincts and fears can get them somewhere. And
If anybody wants to make a joke about the Republican presidential nominee, this is your moment.
I mean, yeah.
All right, we'll be safe. We'll stick away from that. All right, fine.
No, I mean, right, it's valid. I don't think either of us could have predicted how these values would have become sort of slid towards the mainstream in the intervening time since we made the film.
I mean, what I would say is that, look, it was never, it is not my intention to make an overtly political film. And in fact, one of the essential elements, as far as I'm concerned, of a functioning democracy is that you have vibrant voices on right and left and that they're debating each other. I mean, that's the whole principle of democracy, and you need that, and you have to support that and have that. Yeah. So it was never my intention, and I never would associate these viewpoints with a political party or anything like that. What I do think is important to recognize is that what we're seeing politically, both here and in Europe, is that there is a massive sense of disenfranchisement and exclusion by a large portion of the population, and we can disagree with their feelings. We can say that they're not valid. We can certainly disagree with their solutions to those problems. But I think that if we're going to be responsible about it, we have to acknowledge that those feelings are real, and we have to deal with them, and they're a real problem, and that feeling of victimization, of marginalization, of being oppressed by another, that's the seed of every totalitarian and fascist movement that's ever existed, and it's far more prerequisite of it than a figure like Mussolini or Hitler. So to me, all of that is very important to recognize without necessarily making then further connections and associations and labeling that it may be tempting to do, but I don't know how clarifying it is really about the problem.
And I definitely think it's important to say, like, at a moment like this, that I know we're in New York now, and the vast majority of you are probably Democrats, but it is important, I think, to say that I'm sure, and we know that the vast majority of Republicans would never would be as equally abhorred by the beliefs that these people have as we are.
Do you find yourself wanting to do more kind of projects as you're choosing things now that have a message or are sparking a conversation or speaking to something?
I mean, no, I think I like to keep it mixed up and varied. Like, I don't think every film has to have a, Anchorman's one of my favorite films, and I don't think every film needs to be. But I think it's often the stuff that interests me is things like this or as I said, that mentioned the play earlier, but no, I don't think everything I do needs to be like Swiss Army Man has messages, but not anything political or anything like that. So I think. Are
you guys familiar with that film, Swiss Army Man?
The people that are will know. Thank you. The people will know how not political it is. So.
Well, you play a dead man.
I do. Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's actually the least crude introduction that character's ever made. So well done.
You also had to take a kind of a risk for an actor in this film. You had to shave your head on screen.
Yes,
which must have been a little bit terrifying.
Yeah, it was a bit. It was just because, I've never done it before, so I don't know what my head looks like underneath my hair. Fortunately, it was okay. And I think, I did most of it in the scene, and then we got Fernando, our hairdresser, to
give it a little,
kind of tighten it up.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then, a few crew members came out in support and did it too, including our DOP, Bobby, who first of all, he shaved everything apart from but he had really long hair before he shaved it, and then he just left this middle Mohican thing.
The mohawk.
For a long time, and then eventually got rid of that as well. But yeah, it was, I actually, were it not for the ideological associations that haircut has now for me, I really enjoyed having it, but I don't think I'll be going back to it all the time.
Only for Imperium 2.
Yeah. What would that be?
Did you hold castings for guys with shaved heads, or did you just make them do it after?
No, we kind of made them do it. I did.
Pavel had long hair.
Pavel had long hair, and Seth.
Oh, Seth did as well, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, there were definitely a lot of head shaving going on in the in the hair and makeup.
Yeah, but I think our hairdresser at the beginning of the film was like, "This is great. Everyone's got shaved heads. It's fantastic."
Very low maintenance.
And by the end, was just super bored. He was really like, "Give me something to do, please."
Some art to it.
All right, let's watch another moment. This is a scene where your character is in a diner or a restaurant meeting some other members of the movement.
Yes.
And we need guys like you with military backgrounds. We need best practices in our security.
Come on, man. I think our fucking security's pretty good. Well, always room to improve, though, right? Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, like, look at the position of this booth and then tell me without looking where the nearest exits are.
What's your point?
The point is, of all the large booths in this restaurant, you pick the one farthest from the exits. If someone goes down, we're fucked.
No, we're ready for whatever goes down.
Yeah, with only you and him. I don't know your name yet, I'm sorry. Carrying?
Oh, and how the fuck you think you know that?
When you pat someone down so they're facing everybody's lap, it's pretty easy to tell. When you spend 3 years in Iraq, you learn how to scan a room and see threats.
So that was with Seth Numerick as well, there, who is amazing and is amazing in the film, and really plays like a really nasty piece of work. But he's brilliant at it, and you know, he's a fantastic actor. Some of you go to the theatre in New York will be very familiar with Seth's work, but he's fantastic.
What I love about your performance, one of the many things, is that there are a couple of scenes where you get to see your character have a moment where he has to turn it on. You know, that sense where he's being questioned, his authenticity is being called into doubt as the person that he is, and he really has to rise to the challenge, and that was one of those moments.
Yeah. All you can do in that moment is just like commit fully to the lie, whatever it is. You know, that's, you know, I remember Mike talking to me about the backstory we give Nate in the film was that he was an interpreter in Iraq. And so when he goes undercover, he makes it his backstory that he was actually in the Marines, which would appeal to some of these guys. They, in reality, the backstory that they sort of cooked up for Mike was that he was a hardened criminal. And he was like in his early 20s, I guess, and like very sort of baby-faced and nice looking, and so like he'd been built up as this thing, and his story had been established, and then he got in, and everyone was like, "Really, this guy?" And he had to, you know, and the only way you can do that is just by, you know, absolutely knowing your shit, as he did, and committing to it, and it's just a fascinating life.
The other thing I was going to say too is one thing that Mike taught me early on, and it's part of that scene, is that, you know, one of the things you're trying to do is provide value at all times, right? And so Mike was both very well liked in his undercover role, both very well liked, but also it's okay, if you have to choose between being liked and being useful, choose being useful. As long as people see a value for you and see a use, they're going to want to keep you around. And so any way in which you're providing value, adding, okay, I'm going to show you how to redo your security, I'm going to show you how to do this, I'm going to show you how to do that, that was something that made you, again, very valuable to the people that were around you, and kept you in the mix so that they wanted to keep having you around.
It's the how to win friends and influence people.
Which someone really did give Mike when he went undercover. Like, they were like, this is the book you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought, I mean, the minute that Mike told me that, I was like, well, that has to go in the movie. I mean, because it's so counter to at least what my sort of cliched view of this, you know, FBI agent going around kicking butt and all the rest of it was, and that was part of one of the sort of inspirational points for the movie too, was that being an undercover agent is about social skills and getting along with people and making people like you and knowing how to be with people. And so yeah, I read the book as part of the research, and I was like, wow, okay, yeah, this actually makes sense.
But you did also have to say a lot of really vile stuff and kind of indulge in some vile behavior. Did you, as a person, as a performer, have to kind of psych yourself up to talk that way?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it is horrible. It's horrible. I mean, there was a scene I was doing with a Hispanic actor who like, you know, I was going up to him after every take and being like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, and it is, because it is not fun to say that stuff even when you're acting. Like, it's one of the few things that still just feels awful, and normally I find it very easy to separate, you know, what's going on in the scene from life, you know, and it is, but with stuff like that, you just, the intensity of it is so real. For both of you in that moment that you just have to like keep checking in and being like, hey man, I'm really sorry. But yeah, no, so it does definitely take an effect. And it's also why like making a film with Dan, who I get on with incredibly well, and you know, and having that sort of relationship, and the crew were wonderful, and it's, you know, you really need that on films like this. You know, you can't live at that level of intensity and bleakness all the time. You do need to be able to like step off set and just talk about something else and have a laugh about something completely separate from what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And Daniel, in your experience, I mean, this is your first feature film. Was there a little bit of intimidation factor working with this guy?
Yeah, I'm super intimidating.
As you can tell, yeah, exactly. He's terrifying, yeah. No, I mean, no, but purely by the virtue of the fact, I mean, from the moment that I met Dan, we did a Skype to talk about the project. He was just incredibly friendly, welcoming, kind, and also genuinely interested in the material. You know, I mean, that was the thing. It was obvious that he really cared about the project, that he really cared about the role, that he wanted to do his best for it, that he, you know, and I think we both connected on that level.
Yeah.
We both wanted to collaborate. We both wanted to do it. We wanted to make it the best that it can be. And when you have a shared and a common objective like that, and you're both working towards it, then, you know, I mean, that's what, I mean, that's sort of what you're looking for, right? Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were so nice when we first Skyped. I thought you were actually a secret evil person. Like, you were so nice that I was like, he can't. I mean, this must just be for show and for me. Like, he can't really be this nice. And then he was for the entire shoot with everyone, which was awesome. Yeah.
So was it a hard project to kind of, or a hard character to shake off?
No, I don't think so. Like, it you know, no, I don't think it was. I shook it off with some joy, I think. You know, not to, again, I'm sorry.
Don't worry, I won't take it personally.
Like, just in the same way that you enjoyed not having to read neo-Nazi literature, or
right.
I enjoyed, like, you know.
That was a relief, yeah.
Yeah, like, there is, you know, I think the film as a whole and the issues the film brings up were of a concern to me before we started making the film, during, and have remained so after. But I don't think the character in itself was something that I wasn't getting up feeling like aggressive and horrible in that mindset all the time, which that does sometimes happen with stuff. But like with Equus, doing Equus for a long time, I remember going to, like, that sort of takes you to a very sort of bleak place as well, sort of sometimes. But no, with this one it was thankfully easier to just move on. And for you, you'd been with the project for many years, right?
Yes, I haven't moved on quite yet. Yeah. No, it's been about 3.5 years. So yeah, you have to. I mean, I say this all the time, even when I talk to people about other projects. It's like it's a marriage. You know, you really have to commit to something, and you have to get into bed with it and live with it for quite some time. And just like a marriage and just like a relationship, there are highs, there are lows, there's a honeymoon, then there's a, like, what the hell am I doing? There's all of those things, you know? So you have to find things on it that are both interesting on a variety of levels and that are going to continue to sustain you. And I think you also have to find things that are continually challenging. The other thing that I always say is, it's like you want to find a project that maybe you're only like 80% capable of doing, something that you can grow into a little bit. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, over the course of 3 years, you're gonna tire of it. You know. So yeah, it's yeah.
I always think it must be incredibly strange for directors, and particularly, you know, when you have spent like 3 years doing something, and then we shot this in what, 35 days or something, you know, and then it's
25.
25, yeah, right.
You gave me 10 days.
I gave 10 days. Yeah. You didn't have. You would have loved that.
Wishful thinking.
But you know, it must be such a strange thing as a director to suddenly, for that to be it, and it's done. I mean, then obviously you've got post-production and the rest of it, but...
Well, I always say the crazy thing about making a movie is that you spend 3, 4, 5 years on something, and everything hinges upon what happens in those 5 weeks,
right.
Or 6 weeks, or 7 if you're lucky, and that's why shooting is such a high-pressure environment, because everything that's happened before is leading up to that point, and then everything that happens after it is dealing with what happened at that point. But hopefully, if you have the right collaborators and you spend the right amount of preparation and all the rest of it, then you just you make that process as good and as effective as possible, and and then whatever mistakes or messes you make, you clean up in all the part that comes after it.
Right, you fix it all in post.
Yeah, fix it in post.
Heavy visual effects, maybe.
Do you subscribe to that theory that you should take on projects that you are only 80% confident that you can do?
I think that's actually great. I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, I think that's a great way. I think fear is a very motivating force, and the fear of failure and the fear. Like I didn't know how to dance when I had completely agreed to do a Broadway musical. So like, there's nothing that will teach you to dance like just saying, yeah, okay, I'll do that musical in a year, and I'll just learn in the meantime. Like, that's, and I do think there is something to that. With this role, with Swiss Army Man, with the stuff that I feel like I have been best in, like Kill Your Darlings or whatever, they will I think fit that mold of like, okay, I'm like 80% sure I can do this and 20% uncertain, and that just makes you work really, really hard.
Yeah.
How are your dancing skills now?
They would need brushing up if I was going to do another musical, but I think it's in there somewhere. I'm not a great dancer. I can learn choreography, and that's the difference.
Well, we've been joking a little bit about how dark this movie is, but of course, Harry Potter has a lot of dark elements, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, were you a Potter fan?
I don't know what's the correct answer to this. Yeah, I don't know. So honestly, I was not familiar with Harry Potter. I know that's blasphemy in many circles. I did go through a week at one point where I watched all the movies because it was on the verge. I think it was the last one had just come out, and I was like, okay, well, I can't just I have to watch these movies. And the last ones were getting great reviews, and I watched them, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed them when I did. And to me, there was a lot of metaphors in those movies. Maybe I'm reading them wrong, incorrectly about fascism and the Nazis and all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
And to me, I always say that too about the Nazis and about that era. I mean, you look at that, you look at Star Wars. I mean, that the Nazis have become this sort of very common reference point in all of our cultural representations of evil. And I don't know exactly what to draw from that or what to make of that, but I think it's interesting, and it does tell you a lot about.
Cool that they did that in some kids' books and what are supposed to be kids' books and films. The fact that she was tackling that is excellent.
Well, the interesting, you make that point. That's interesting because then, as a child, if you're watching something like that, then you have some sort of template or thing that then, when you become aware of the historical reality, there's probably some grounding for it, even in a way that maybe you're not aware of. That wouldn't be if you weren't exposed to popular culture like that. So the whole notion of fascism is not a completely unfamiliar thing, which is probably a good thing, because the more aware that we are of these things, the more we can make sure that they don't happen again.
Were you taking in the films that way when you were making them, as this sort of broad good and evil story?
Yes, absolutely, and I think that they definitely, particularly with the sort of the idea of pure races and things like that, there is a lot in Potter that's directly analogous to this stuff. Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what's great about them, is that they work in that same way, that they are not didactic political films, but they do, they will still inform people in a certain way of just, about these ideas of good and evil, and I do and the idea that the notion that acceptance of everybody is inherently good, and yeah, I think I was perhaps not as definitely wasn't as political then as I am now, but I think I was definitely capable of still taking them on in that way. Yeah.
Are there any Harry Potter fans in the audience?
No. They're very. Yeah.
Just a smattering.
They're very hard to find.
Let's just watch a short clip.
If anyone here has any knowledge of Mr. Potter's movements this evening, I invite them to step forward. Now.
It seems, despite your exhaustive defensive strategies, you still have a bit of a security problem, Headmaster. I'm afraid it's quite extensive. How dare you stand where he stood? Tell them how it happened that night. Tell them how you looked him in the eye. A man who trusted you and killed him. Tell them.
I mean, who can resist Maggie Smith in a firefight? That's
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You lead with that.
That's fantastic. Maggie Smith and Alan Rickman, it doesn't get much better.
At the tail end of Potter, did you ever consider doing something else besides acting?
No, not really. I mean, by that point, I just was so in love with the industry, and and I've had this amazing opportunity to be a part and to discover something really young that I loved doing. You know, some people search their whole lives for for a job that they really love, and once I realized that was what that was for me, there was no way I was going to give it up. There was never even everyone always asked me sort of some variation of the question of like,
sorry
why?
To be boring.
No, not at all. But like everyone always asked me like some variation of the question on like, why are you even working? Like, why do you bother? Like, you did that. Why didn't you do anything else? It's like, because I've worked every day of my life since I was 10, and I don't know what my life is without being a part of film sets and theatre now as well. I'm thankful to say, but like I love being on film sets. It's a very rare job that you get to be in a creative industry, an industry where you get to use your imagination all the time, and an industry where you get to be part of a team and part of a community and have that feeling of all working together on something towards one goal. Those are things that I think are going to become increasingly rare to find in a job. You know, a job that lets you use your creative side as part of a large group, and you know that's what's exciting to me as an actor is that you get to be. I see a film set as being the single place with the greatest number of different disciplines coming together to make one thing. Like, you know, it's, you know, there's everyone from carpenters to editors to riggers or you know, sparks lighting, that's what we call sparks in England. Like everybody, you know, so the gamut that is run of the kind of people that work on film sets is so amazing and broad, and you know, those are the things that's why I'm excited to be an actor, is because you get to stand in the middle of that and you know, watch it all happen.
What did you learn anything from this kind of attitude on your making this film?
Well, it's funny. I mean, what he was saying, I wholeheartedly agree with. I was actually going to comment on it because it's my experience of it as well, and it's very interesting for me as the director and the writer, because you start out as the master of the subject. You start out knowing much more about the subject than anyone else. But if the film crew is working the way that they should, which I was fortunate they did, I had amazing people on the crew, then, you know, very quickly the production designer will know more about creating those sets than you know. The costume designer will know more about what these people wear than you do. The makeup designer will know more about the tattoos than you do. And that's kind of an amazing thing to see, so that all of these people in their specialized particular field becomes greater experts on the subject matter than you are. And so that really adds to that feeling of, wow, this is amazing to see a community taking on a project like this, and to see everyone, all of the parts of this machine, all of these people and all of their creativity really bringing this thing to life. And I think that's why part, at least the way I see it, part of your responsibility as a director is to create an environment where people can pursue their creativity. Because if you're not doing that, if people aren't really able to take it and run with it and use their own ideas, their own inspiration, then you're going to get shortchanged on what you could get in return. So yeah, in short, I totally agree with what Dan is saying, and it is the great joy of making a movie. It's the really cool thing about it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it does. What was I going to say? You know, I've not been a fan of the idea of an auteur as a director, which is that like you're the only person on set with an artistic vision, because that's just a lie. Always, you know, if a director's on set, you know, probably the guy who's getting tea for that director is probably trying to make a short film at the weekend. You know, everyone is working on their own projects. Everyone has their own thing. You know, somebody who might be, you know, just starting off in hair and makeup might be being the head of a hair department on a student film on the weekend. Like everyone has creativity, and as you say, the more you harness that. And I've watched it on sets before when it becomes clear that the director feels that they are the only person there with an artistic vision, everyone else just shuts down, as well they should, because they know they're not going to be listened to. But when you've got a director like Dan, or like, I don't know, the Daniels that I worked with on Swiss Army Man, or Alexander Aja, or like lots of great people that I've been able to work with, it just makes everyone suddenly, you unleash this creative force of a film set, which is incredibly exciting.
I love what I'm hearing from you, because it seems to me that one of the things that connects some of the parts that you've played is a sense of idealism. Some of the characters that you have, you know, have a sense that they are out there, they're going to change the world, they're going to make it better, you know, in whatever small way they can. And it sounds like, is that an attitude that comes from your own thinking?
I guess so. I mean, I think I have huge amounts of admiration for anybody that believes they can change the world. Like, I like, good on you, well done, please keep doing what you're doing. Like, there's a part of me that like, is like, I think, what I'm talking about are people who say, like, I'm going to end world poverty, or I'm going to end world hunger, or something like that. I'm just like, that's amazing, please do that. I feel like it's my job to just affect the little part of the earth that I can, which is probably very small-minded, but like, I do, I want to make, I think as an actor, as often, sometimes, not always, but often the lead actor on a film set, you are uniquely placed to actually make a big difference in the lives of all the people you work with. Because if the director of a film and the actor of a film and the DOP and preferably the first AD as well, if they are all good, nice people, everyone will have a good time. And if even one of them is really not pleasant, that can affect lots of people's day really negatively, and make a job that is inherently fun, which is making films, into something that's really arduous. And I definitely think I have a responsibility on any film set I go onto to make sure that, because, like, you know, we're going to watch these films, you know, anything I'm in, like, I think the thing I've seen most is probably one of the Potter films, and it was because it was at multiple premieres. You know, I don't watch my stuff back, like, in years to come, and I don't think I will. The experience of doing it is ultimately what you're going to be left with. And that's the same for all of the crew as well. So if that's not a good, I mean, that has to be a good experience. Because, yeah, just like, because we're incredibly lucky to be in film, to be in this industry that it is incredibly fun, and you get to do really cool stuff. And the idea that some people make it their business to kind of like upset that balance, or, you know, can't put their own issues aside long enough for you to, like, you know, for everyone to have a good time is very frustrating, and it's not something I've seen very often at all, I have to add. I think, you know, the actors that have really bad reputations and things, and that you hear about sort of, you know, in, like, I don't know, gossip rags and things like that, are generally, yeah, they are, I would just like to say, vastly in the minority. But it's just unfortunate that always gets them the most sort of attention. But most actors are really nice and normal. It's just the crazy ones, you know.
Did you grow up with that work ethic, or was it something that kind of came from being a working actor as a child?
No, I mean, I think my parents are both very hardworking people, and I think that was instilled in me from them, and then also from being on set, and also just like learning how to be on set, and learning how much I loved it, and like, I had boundless energy. I was a kid, so like, I always said, like, I was really lucky to find a place where that sort of hyperactive energy and enthusiasm is welcomed, and as it was on film, and but yeah, I think it was a combination of yeah, it's just all the people in my life that I really admire are really hard workers. So I guess I was just trying to emulate them.
What would have happened if you hadn't gone into acting that as a kid? Would you have just become like an obsessive video game player, or?
I was always really crap at video games, so I don't think that would have been a starter. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. Like, I have no idea what my life would have been like if I hadn't been an actor. It's sort of too hard to say, because I hadn't really, like, there was no other avenues I was investigating when I was 10 as to, like, things I might like. No, I didn't mean that to sound flippant, but, like, you know, but you don't, I hadn't developed any other ideas of, like, things I might have been interested in. And actually, like, all the things that I'm also interested in doing are things relating to the film industry, like writing or directing. I like to think I still would have, because both my parents are in the industry, so I think I probably would have ended up being, like, I probably would have ended up on the other side of the camera. I like to think as like as an AD or somebody in that department.
Yeah. You also played a young artist in Kill Your Darlings. You played Allen Ginsberg.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we have a little clip from that movie. If you guys haven't seen it, well, let's watch a clip and we'll talk about it.
Where are you going?
You know me now. I'm only good at beginnings.
You're dropping out?
Best of luck.
Okay. My father showed up today with some new woman. And in the middle of all the Allen's screw-up monologue, all of a sudden, I realize I don't care. I've never not cared. So I told him it was my idea to steal the boat.
Why?
Because I don't want to be the person they think I am. I am on academic probation and I could get kicked out. You can't leave. You started something and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do next. It's our turn. Let's show them what we can do. You in?
So that scene was literally shot in 10 minutes. We were being actively chased out of Columbia University at that point. As Ginsberg was, I suppose. We had 10 minutes at the end of the day, and John Krakauer. I mean, and it's a beautiful example of, you know, all you need to shoot a scene is like, I think we had maybe 3 shots in that scene and 3 takes, and it was 2 cameras on those angles that you saw then, and then I think we shot 1 wide that was never even used. And it, you know, sometimes that's all you need to tell a story. It's like, I love scenes like that, which actually, like, how basically and sparsely that scene is shot came out of a massive time crunch, but actually fed into something beautiful in the scene.
Yeah. Do you like to rehearse?
Yeah,
film, not for
film. Not a lot. No. I mean, I think it depends what kind. Like some actors, I think of rehearsal as the time when you learn your lines, and like I don't think of it that way, and so like I already know them. So I like to generally speaking get into it as quickly as possible, but that's like a selfish actor's point of view, saying that, like, you know, you need to give the camera team a chance to guess where you're going to be, and so they can, you know, and the focus puller, and so that's why it's like, as lovely as it would be to just shoot first time on everything. DOPs and focus pullers tend not to enjoy that as much as actors.
Right. They need to know where the camera goes. With 25 days for a shoot, you didn't have a lot of time to rehearse probably anyway.
No, we didn't. I mean, it was pretty light with us. I mean, so me and you did sort of 1 read through in stages of the whole thing, and then with some of the sort of more major pairings and relationships, we would do a couple reviews, like with him and Tony, or with him and Tracy, or with him and Sam, things like that. You know, for me, I'm not very partisan about it one way or another. I try to suit it to whatever the actor wants. Some actors are going to tell you that they really want and they love rehearsal, and some are going to say no, it deadens it, they don't want that. So I just try to be flexible, though. Yeah, there are also practical and logistical considerations, and when you only have 25 days, there's not a lot of rehearsal.
And Kill Your Darlings probably was also a very short.
I think that was exactly 25 days as well. Yeah.
So that was not your first post-Potter film, but it was one of the ones that kind of took your character, you know, it was a bigger leap from your previous one. Did you feel a sense of, were you nervous about how that would be perceived?
No, again, like my first thing I ever did after starting Potter, well, actually, no, that's not quite it. The first thing I did after starting Potter, I think, was a small Australian movie called December Boys. And then I did this, then I think I did a thing for TV called My Boy Jack. And then after that, I did Equus in London, and that, to be honest, like I don't think anything could have been a bigger departure from Potter at the time, and so I feel like that has set me up for all the stuff I've done since in a way that is like, you know, if I feel like that was the moment where people were either like, okay, I'm interested in his career, or they went, okay, not into that. So, you know, I think that was probably when that happened. And so I feel like anybody who, you know, was aware of Equus happening was probably primed for films like Kill Your Darlings or Swiss Army Man.
Right, and you keep returning to theater and if you guys haven't gotten a chance to see Privacy yet at the public, I guess
you probably won't. Yeah, it's sold out, but there is a cancellations line. So if anyone fancies it.
And it's also one of those things that's engendering a lot of big conversations about privacy and discourse. And that's one of the things that you were enthused about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the, I think, as I mentioned earlier, like I'm a great believer in the power of conversation and talking. And I think that the only way, particularly with an issue about privacy, which they sort of, because the people that benefit from invading your privacy tend to make privacy really boring when they talk about it, because it's in their interests too, because it's in their interest for you all to just tune out and not pay attention. But I think what we're trying to do in the play is make it entertaining and make it informative at the same time, so that people are better equipped to, because ultimately until we have people in the right places, in the right positions that can ask the right questions and can really hold people accountable, we're not going to get anywhere. And so I think getting everyone as informed as humanly possible about that issue, which should be of immense concern to all of us. It really, really, really should. And we're not saying, by the way, I would like to add this, that in no way are we or the play saying that technology is bad. We're not fighting against technology. That is a fight you will always lose. But it's just important to understand how much of ourselves we're giving away, and how companies, kind of slant things so that it is getting increasingly easier and easier for huge breaches of privacy to happen.
Yeah, well, all that said, one of the other things you talk about in the show is how to take the perfect selfie.
Yeah.
So I think we all want to know what the secret is.
We talk about it in the show. It's not actually me that does it in the show. It's Reg Rogers who does it a lot more insane. It's basically about it's the sort of classic stuff. It's hold your phone at a 45-degree angle high above your head. Most people look better with their face tilted slightly towards the lens rather than straight on. And the other rules are very silly and it's more, but there's something glorious. And what's great about the show is that it taps into the essential narcissism of everybody, in that people who would never normally be into that kind of thing, there's something wonderful about looking out and seeing an audience full of people all taking a selfie, and then because that's the thing. I had a friend who came and saw the show who hates any kind of audience participation normally, but he came in, and after 5 minutes he was just like, in his words, take me. I want to see I want to see how much you can get of me, because we do. I don't want to say too much about it, because the show might have another life somewhere else, and I don't want to ruin anything. But it's there's a lot of the audience's own information comes into play in a big way in our show, and we don't. And what's frightening and amazing about that is that we don't have to do anything even remotely special to get that information, because people just put it out there for us to grab. So yeah, that's one of the things that we talk about in the show. But it's a really it's a good show. So
and well, on that note,
I'm sorry that you haven't been able to see it. But, I would love to say go and get a ticket, but we are sold out, and I don't want to be a tease.
On that